Alrighty, I think we figured it out. Greetings, greetings, greetings. Welcome everyone to the Let's Get Gritty podcast with yours truly, Dr. India White. I am thrilled to be here. I was having some issues there. I don't know what took place, but I'm glad to be here. Yay! This is a live session. This is why I like to do mine pre-recorded because you never know what you're gonna do. I hope your weather's doing okay. I know for us down here, it looks like it's about to pour down again. Hopefully no craziness as we air this podcast. Now, I want to go ahead and get into our announcements. So, first things first, Let's Get Gritty talk or Let's Get Gritty podcast, excuse me, with Dr. India White. It will be featured on Spotify and all of my main social media outlets. Okay. If you're looking to see where you could follow me, things like that, my Facebook is linked in, is Miss India White, excuse me. LinkedIn is the India White. Twitter is Indy Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indy238. YouTube is India White 123, and TikTok is Dr. India White. So super thrilled to have you guys join us. In addition to that, you can also check out the website www.india-white.com for books, blogs, or to schedule me for an event. I'm thankful for some upcoming events. LA, I will see you guys soon. And hopefully I'll be able to see you guys at NCSM, NCTM. I've learned to just take these things with flexibility due to travel and so many other different things that take place. But I do know that, everybody has wonderful intentions and we're going to continue to move this work forward together. So I'm just thankful to all of you guys for the invite to your platforms. So I hope to see you guys at these upcoming events. Also the Making Math Moments conference, and there's some other conferences coming up as well. Please also make sure that you check out the Grit Mini Workshop. Talks about how to harness grit to help your students thrive. Celebrate that workshop with us because we did put some effort into that, and we're doing our best to join you guys in helping students throughout the nation. So also the Grit Academy, where students can come for tutoring. I will be there to service you guys and will be there to just make sure your kids can get abundant success. Okay, so with that said, I don't want to hold this up too much longer. I do want to bring out a phenomenal representative of grit, an example in their own right. And that is going to be the one and only Hillsborough County graduate now. And that is going to be Alexander Rivera. I'm going to bring him to the show. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome to the show, Alexander. So, okay, listen, I am so proud of you. I cannot stop singing your praises. You look fabulous. You look like a load's been lifted off your shoulders. But listen, before I go in with you, I want you to first tell us a little bit about yourself and your grit journey.
Well, I am Alexander Rivera, a very proud graduate of Hillsborough County Public Schools. As many of you guys know, I graduated yesterday, which I'm feeling very excited about. The way that grit has got me to this point in life, especially as a high school graduate, I owe such gratitude and such thanks to Dr. White primarily for her work in what she does. I know that, during these last couple of years have not been necessarily easy for me, specifically high school wise. I mean, let's face it, high school is nobody's cup of tea at the end of the day, but what I enjoy the most is, being able to work with Dr. White. I respect her profession. I respect the amazing self-efficacy and advocacy that this woman has, trained me to be one of those gritty thinkers. So what got me into my grit journey, I was 14 years old. And as somebody who was, you got to understand this was during the COVID-19 pandemic, when I entered my freshman year. So a lot of it was, mostly staying home, doing, e-learning, doing Zooms like I'm doing right now. So a lot of it was mostly remote based. It wasn't until my second semester of my freshman year that I wanted to go back in person. And this was really it was a declaration of intent, and it was, it was mailed to us, and it, had the option whether to stay remote or to go in person. And so one of the things that I remember talking with my family members was being able to understand that when you're remote working, in the sense that basically in general, it was a very hard journey, but I'm very grateful that that journey is nowhere near over. I will be at HCC in the fall, and then I will be a Florida Gator.
Excellent. Oh, I love that. Go Gators. Okay, so you said you're going to HCC. So for those of you that don't know, that's Hillsborough County.
Yes.
That's Hillsborough Community College. Okay.
Community college.
So what is your major going to be?
Elementary education and teaching.
Excellent. I love it. All right. So listen, Alexander, guys, joined me at the last FCTM conference, and he actually shared one of the speaking engagements with me there. And he poured his heart out to those teachers. And he got so loved on by the education community that was there in Orlando that day, with all those fabulous teachers across the state of Florida and throughout the nation that joined us. And so it was just a thrill to see you go there, get some oomph, and then walk across the stage. So with that said, I am so proud of you. I cannot stop smiling because I know the journey, a little bit of the journey, and you did it. You emulated grit. Like none other no other student I know of. So listen, I'm going to ask some questions, okay? And I need you to just keep it real with the audience, because teachers and principals, superintendents, parents will be watching this, and they're going to need to hear from you to get some advice, okay? So first things first, tell us, how did great resilience in time, how did grit help you to graduate?
Well, I think that, with grit, you first off, you have to have a great deal amount of courage to do it. I mean, as I said before, my high school career was no easy feat, primarily because, the first 2 years of high school were, during around the time of COVID. So once I I must have been maybe about 16 or so, and I was, and I was a struggling student, and I was at the borderline. My GPA was low, and they were like, "Hey, listen, you got to go to credit recovery or some type of, something to pull your GPA up, because it's not where it needs to be." And so one of my guidance counselors recommended that I go to an adult center specifically. And as much as that is sad to say, it was, it wasn't the best decision that I think that was best for me, given the fact that I was a student who had an IEP, but also a student who had special needs. I'm an autistic student, and, I just didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And then I reached out to my region superintendent, and I remember the words he told me, which was, remember that, you're here for a purpose, and purpose leads to action. So I then, of course, said, you know what, I'm going to go back, and, I'm going to work my tail off and, earn my credits. And so, I mean, it took a couple of tries, but, with grit, as I said before, at FCTM, through the grace of God and through, the struggles that I've faced, and, and it's important to remember, it's very important to, face challenges head on, but sometimes they can be very unexpected. So when it came for me to walk I was supposed to walk in 2024, but, I did not feel that I was ready enough to graduate, in a sense, meaning that, I was very much in self-doubt. I became clinically depressed. I was, struggling for acceptance. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to quit school altogether. And I didn't quit school necessarily, but I was on the borderline between, do I want to stay at this school site, or do I need to merge over to a GED center? And so that August, before school started, I was volunteering at my amazing friend and mentor, Representative Susan Valdez, back to school fair. And I remember she gave me nuggets of wisdom, as I call it.
Yeah.
And those nuggets of wisdom, and me and her had a full on of what seemed like an eternity conversation of get it done, get it, finish, essentially, because, your time is running out. And so finally, when it came to a head, she was like, okay, you're doing great, continue the amazing work. So at that point, I was, as I said before, I was a struggling student. So I, remember what, Dr. White had mentioned was to never give up and to, persevere. And so I kind of used that, and that actually helped mold me into mentoring others. And in the same sense, it was also helping me advocate for not just myself, but for my fellow students and my fellow teachers and my administrators. So when it came for me to walk, I remember 2 weeks before I graduated, I received a call from my assistant principal for curriculum. And mind you, I'm at this point, I finished all my classes, and I was actually in my home, and I was in my room, and I remember getting a call from my administrator. She's like, hey, do you have time to come into the, do you have time to come in? And this is the day before my big final exam. This was one of the last classes I had to take. She's like, just come see me after your exam. I have something to tell you. I was like, okay. So I finished my exam, passed with flying colors, thank God. And so I go to her office, and she's like, here you go. I'm like, what's this? She goes, this is the golden ticket that you've been wanting for the last 5 years. And it was a thing that says, you will be walking at such and such date. Here's the location. I mean, I was just thrilled. Like, I was like a kid going to Disney for the first time. Yeah. And when I saw that slip and it had my name on it, I was like, oh my, I finally did it. And I went home and I cried myself to sleep that night, because I was like, oh my God, I really persevered. And, I'm not just mentoring other people, but in the same sense, I'm also leading by example. So, that for me was a huge change in my life. And I commend Dr. White and all the other mentors along the way who have helped me and guided me in the sense that I am where I am today.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I was not expecting to get emotional. Oh my gosh. I'm just so proud of you. That's beautiful. Beautifully said.
Way, you guys, this was not scripted. This was not scripted at all.
So have to do live shows versus pre-recorded. Oh my gosh, this is fabulous. Wow, Alexander, you did it. And so how did you start that journey within your heart when you were told, no, you need to go to a center, you're not going to get a diploma, maybe you need to get your GED instead? So tell me about that resolve that you went through emotionally, and how you were able to maybe take one of the pillars of grit. Like, was it growth mindset? Was it resilience? Was it self-efficacy, where you're believing in your ability to succeed? Or was it time management that just made you kick yourself in the butt and just say, I'm going to do this? So talk to us about that crossroad.
Well, I think a majority of it had to do with the fact that, once that was clear that, they wanted to send me to the center, I said, no, I have a lot more to prove to you, more than you think. If I am capable of going to school and I'm here for a reason, then we need to quit, playing, games, specifically head games, and we need to come up with a resolve. So when I was at the adults, and I was only there 3 months, and I was at the point now, I was like, this just isn't it, because you got to think, being a 16-year-old and you're in a room of, 13, or not 13, 14-year-olds, excuse me, you're in a room of actual graduates or whatever. And so that for me was, for when I saw them struggling, because I saw that when I walked into that adult education center, I really felt bad for some of them, hearing the stories that that I heard from their perspective. And then having to watch my mother, who went to the same adult education center, who was 45 when she got her high school diploma.
Excellent.
Obviously, she was a teen mom at 16. So, then, me and my sister came along in her 30s. So she never really had the chance of going back to school. She wanted to prove to not just us that, time has no clock, essentially, is how she put it. Time is of the essence. If you can do anything, you can succeed anything. That's how I took it.
Exactly.
And so here my mom is, 52 years old, going back for her counseling degree. So, really time has no clock. And so that for me, I really took that into consideration, because ultimately I was thinking, okay, they're going to say to my face, oh, you don't have time for that, or no, you don't have time for that.
Wow.
I mean, when I tell you time has no clock, and the reason, and I use the T from grit, it meaning time is of the essence, is how I look at it.
Yeah.
Because had it not would have been for my mother to lead by example, I would have not have walked across that stage like how I did yesterday. I would have not have gotten to the point where I'm going off to college to mold the next generation of gritty thinkers, so they can go off. And I cannot tell you a time where I've had a student who has come up to me and not had a problem. They tell me, if they have a problem, all I have to do is, if I need to, I'll make a phone call to the region superintendent, whoever is struggling. If you're struggling in school, I'm willing to devote my time to helping you. Unless it's math, then you're going to have to call Dr. White. But anything else, because you're good with math, don't get me wrong. But when it comes to, certain things, and when I had somebody come up to me and they were like, okay, what are the next steps that I need to take? I had a student who was at summer graduation, who was in the same shoes as me, and he was struggling, and I didn't know him that well, but he was in the same class as me, and he would tell me, hey, listen, I don't have supplies or whatever. So at home we have a school supply cabinet, which it has paper, pencils, whatever a child needs. And I said, well, what do you need? Just text me a list and I will go through what I have, and I will, and I'll see you. So then he was like, okay, I'll see you Monday, because this was a Friday that me and him have a conversation. By next Monday, I come in and he was just excited to see me. He's like, so what'd you get? I'm like, I was able to make sure that he was prepared for life, while in the same token preparing myself. So it's all about teamwork. That's another T that I like to use, between time and teamwork. You have to work together as a team. It is no easy feat. And I'm so very grateful to the administrators and the counselors and to the teachers as well of Wharton High School in Tampa, because had it not would have been for them and for them to prepare me, I would not be sitting here talking about education. I would instead be talking with a therapist or somebody, because my heart is so full of gratitude and grit. And I feel that, once I, become a licensed teacher, I plan sharing my, making sure that they're prepared for whether it be middle school, depending if I teach fifth grade or not. I haven't decided yet. It's not decided yet, no. But what's important to remember is that we have work to do. And I feel like the only way we can succeed is by making sure that we are self-motivating our students. That is another point that I would like to give out, because ultimately, motivation, teamwork, and courage is what makes a student succeed.
So I love how you're saying that. It's like you're giving pointers. What else would you like to tell teachers that are trying to tell teachers that are trying to students?
Teachers, I have to say that the biggest tool that you can use is time management. Obviously, this is something that, was discussed in Dr. White's session at FCTM, is what are some ways that we can, help our students succeed, whether it be time management, using a clock, a sand timer, whatever it is. If you know your student is struggling, obviously, teachers, first off, I commend you for the profession that you do. As somebody who is going to be a future educator, I can tell you that, it's important to remember that with that, there's a lot of determination in what you do. Obviously, it's not easy for everybody, but what's important to remember is that you have to devote yourself into making a difference in that student's life. And the way that we can do it is by allowing them to remember that they are important, that they are valued. And there's never been a teacher that I did not like. For example, my former world history teacher from junior high, his name was Mr. Thomas Stahl. And so, I'm sorry about the ice maker. But long story short, we have serious, work to do. And one of the things that's important is obviously our children need to know that they are loved. And I feel like, teachers really are almost like second parents to students. I call them my school parents because, they are with our children. They are molding our next future generation. And, they just, if you see a student that is struggling, even if they don't ask for help, still help anyway. Because ultimately, what our job is to do is to help them succeed. And, no student is going to tell, unless they, really want you to know. What's important is that children matter, our students matter, and we're doing our part. And, by self-motivating our students, I can tell you, had it not would have been for, as I said before, had it not would have been for Representative Valdez and without Dr. White, I would not be this huge activist, not just for education, but just a variety of different things, whether it be civil rights, human rights. I'm, the term that I use is that I'm what you call an eclectic activist, meaning I, represent a variety of different things, ranging from public education to equality and that types of thing. But my advice to you teachers is that if you see a student is struggling, make sure that you reach out to make sure that they are heard, because they can tell you a student can tell you one thing, an admin can tell you a completely separate thing. If you know in your heart that you see a student is struggling, don't be afraid. You have to help them. If they ask for help, help. If, between self-motivating your students, but time management as well.
Thank you for sharing that. Now I want to talk about pillar mindset, resilience, empathy, or management.
I'm sorry?
Out of the pillars, which one do you refer to? Growth mindset.
I would say growth mindset.
Okay.
Because, as time goes on, our students grow from the K through 12, and even in post-secondary or, vocational, whatever a child wants to do after they graduate. What's important to remember is that what I love the most is at certain schools in Hillsborough County, they have what's called a PBIS incentive. So like, for example, if, a student earns perfect attendance, then they'll, get an incentive. Same thing for, getting a level 2, 3, or excuse me, between a level 3 and a level 4 or a level 5 on their FAST, for the assessment of student thinking. So we have to remember that growth mindset. And one of the things that I love the most about growth mindset is, I don't know if you teachers have it specifically wherever you guys are tuning in from, but some schools here in Hillsborough are called 7 mindset schools. And there's a wonderful educator, or excuse me, a wonderful principal out there who recently just transitioned from G.R.I.T to Muller. Her name is Delia Jackson-Yarborough, who has been a huge supporter of this 7 mindsets. And so it focused on those 7 growth mindsets in general. But it's important to remember they also use it into their curriculum as well, so that I'm not too familiar with 7 mindsets specifically, but growth mindset is important, especially in a classroom, and also it could be used outside of the classroom as well.
Well, give an example. For you.
So, growth mindset in the sense of, like, if you could give me an example, that way I can better answer your question.
Maybe when you were struggling, when you were going to graduate, when did it really kind of hey, I'm not quitting?
So it was obviously, going back to answer your question, one of the most amazing things that I was able to do was able to go to a back to school fair. And I remember having this conversation with my godmother, and I remember sitting down with her, and I told her, I said, hey, listen, I'm thinking about quitting school. And she was like, okay, no, you're not. And 2, let's talk in the cafeteria. So, and it was at Leto, go Falcons. So we were sitting in the cafeteria, and it was just me, Representative Valdez, and her district aide at the time. And so we're sitting down and we're talking, and I told her, I said, listen, I think I want to quit school. And she goes, no, you're not. You may think that in your mind, but it's mind over matter. She goes, you have so much potential. You have so many people that are rooting for you to graduate. You can't, because the advice that she gave me was, in a sense, don't do that. It's important to remember that what's in front of you, face it head on rather than retracting yourself and you're sitting in the back of a room. Like, picture that you're on stage for a musical or a play. Okay, you want to excel. You want to receive that credibility for that hard work that you did for that play. And you have to follow the script of what's in front of you. Because if you forget your lines, then it's going to end in disaster or catastrophe. The way that I take that into consideration is that, as I said before, time has no clock. So, going back to what I said, I remember telling her, I was like, I can't, I want to quit, but in the same token, I don't know if it's the right decision I should make. And ultimately, it did come with a heavy price. Because, I had to, miss events, family members of mine, birthdays, that type of thing, and I had to tell them later on that the reason why is mainly because, I got to get this diploma. Yes, some of you have already graduated, but, in the sense, I need to do what's right for me by telling myself, okay, we need to get this done. We have to succeed. There's no, obviously, because of my IEP, I can stay until the age of 22. However, who wants to be 22 years old getting a high school diploma? Not saying that, there are lots of 22-year-olds who are in adult education centers. But, long story short, when she told me, she was like, hey, you got to get this done. I'm going to knock some sense into you. And, she told me, she was like, at this point, just, keep doing great. Pay attention in school. Do what the teachers tell you, because they're trying to help you. And one of the things that I refused to do, I tried my best to ask questions in school, because by asking for help rather than waiting, it can ultimately lead to, different things. But I'm just very grateful that Representative Valdez and my mentors, like Dr. Way as well, have really, helped me into molding myself. And they're like, I know you can do it. Self-determination is what gets you that golden ticket, which ultimately can be your high school diploma.
That's fabulous. And I'm
That's
so
fabulous. And I'm so
Representative Valdez, her
Representative Valdez, her flowers.
we deserve them.
We deserve them.
Proud to her.
Proud to her.
And to all
And
the
to
other
all
leaders
the others,
that have been part of your
that
tribe.
are part of your
Now,
tribe. Now,
this is my next question for
this is
you.
my next question for you.
What advice do you give
What
parents
advice do you give parents
that are struggling to stay
that are struggling
motivated
to stay motivated
or are struggling to
or are
motivate their
struggling to motivate their? So if a student, now parents, I think that, if you know your child is struggling, and let's say a teacher or an administrator or even a guidance counselor comes up to you and says, hey, listen, we don't know what's going on with, let's say we use Mike as an example. Let's say Mike is not doing well in chemistry and his teacher is concerned about his grade, and then she tells his guidance counselor, and the parent doesn't want to, because I've dealt with parents like this who want to see their child succeed. However, they're not pushing their student well enough to reach that final point. So my advice would be to make sure that you're staying active in your student's education. Obviously, one of the best ways that you can connect with your child's education, join the PTA, join the PTSA, Parent Teacher Student Association. So, go to conference nights, talk with, your administration, talk with your guidance counselor. And one of the things that I think is beneficial is that before school starts, if you're able, set up a meeting between the guidance counselor, an AP, whether it be an AP for student affairs or curriculum, perhaps with an AP for curriculum and an AP for student affairs, a school principal, a school counselor, yourself and your child, and create a goal plan. Because ultimately, they're going to follow up with you. And one of the things that my mom used to do when I was in high school is that towards the end of the semester, we would meet in July, we would write our goals on a piece of paper, and those goals were sent to the principal, the two APs, and the guidance counselor, as well as the student had a copy. If they knew that, let's say, for example, if Mikey wants to meet his science credit for graduation and he knows that he needs it to graduate, then what the alternative course would be, write out that goal plan. Number one, I will pass my science benchmark by December. And then if they meet up with you and, let's say it's December and they're like, hey, Mikey finally reached his goal, check it off. Let's say his next goal is for his reading and he passes it. That's another check mark. So, creating systems like this specifically to help your child succeed is the best thing you can ever do. Because by creating goals, that's, and another thing, parents, make sure, if you have an agenda planner, make sure your student has one. It will be your child's best friend. Let's say on Friday, Mike has a science quiz, or let's say he has an English quiz. Write it out beginning on Monday in the note column, and it says, study for English final. When he looks at his planner, he's gonna be like, oh yeah, I have an English final on Friday. So that would give him the entire week to study on top of, but make sure, parents, that you are consistently involved with your child's education, because ultimately, it is up to the student. But in the same token, just make sure that, you're preparing your child. Because yes, I commend some of the parents who make, who understand what they're doing with their child, and I fully commend you. However, there's a lot of, things that go along with that. However, just, make sure that the child specifically is prepared. That way, by outlining your goals early, and, ultimately, by the time Mikey graduates high school, he's going to remember, oh yeah, my mom was on top of my butt, just like how Dr. White and Representative Valdez were, because they wanted to see me succeed. And ultimately, I did it. So by creating goals for yourself And in the words of Representative Valdez, create small goals to reach that big goal, which ultimately is to graduate high school. By creating small goals every week, whether it's, motivating, whether it's, impacting your student, just make sure that you're preparing them for the next generation.
This is excellent. Now,
Now,
you've left advice for
you've
parents.
left advice for parents.
You've left advice for
You've left advice for teachers.
If you can leave a word of
If
advice
you
for
can give a word of advice
on supporting them
supporting them
as they're supporting
as
students
they're
through
supporting students through
what we can help.
what we can help.
I would say my advice, principals and specifically school districts in general, I, can understand that, there's a lot of going on that's specifically on your shoulders, considering the fact that, school starts back, it could be in a few weeks, it could be in a few, in a month or something. Just make sure that, your student is prepared on day one. By being prepared, by having self-determination, by making sure, if you know in your heart that you see a student that is struggling, or if you see somebody that is struggling, don't be hesitant to reach out to the child's parent. But ultimately, my most important rule that I tell you, principals, is that I wouldn't say take your time, but what I would say is because ultimately you are the leader of your students. You are the leaders of our teachers, our paraprofessionals, what have you. Because, and I applaud so many of the principals out there specifically who do what they do. It is no easy feat, but we have to understand that, at the end goal, our goal is to graduate. Specifically, if you're a high school principal, I know nothing would please you more than shaking hands with that student and handing them their diploma. And the way we can do that is by making sure that, do a PBIS incentive if they make perfect attendance, or if they, do the right thing. Now, as for the school superintendents, specifically, area superintendents, region superintendents, what have you, what's important to remember is that, I understand that, principals can be stressed out at times, but in the same token, it's important to remember that by taking these nuggets of wisdom, I highly encourage you to share it with not just your superintendent of schools, but the school district in general, because you guys are all on one team. It's, it's like a football team. You want to work together so you can score those touchdowns, and you want to have victories. But yes, sometimes there can be bumps in the road, and I've never met a person from a single school district that has had a problem. But, as I said before, just take your time with your students. If you know that they're struggling, or if you know that deep down they're, going through a lot, talk with them. And, same thing for the students. Students, if you know that you're afraid of speaking up, do not be hesitant to ask for help. There are multiple people out there. You have your school psychologist, your school social worker, your admin, your principal, your parents. If, and I applaud the students as well, because I know there's a lot of gritty students out there who I know can succeed. And, ultimately, you can do it as long as you have the time, the dedication, the self-motivation, and the determination to do it. And it's the same thing I'm telling our principals and our region superintendents and staff.
Excellent.
Excellent.
Well, you answered this
Well,
question.
you answered this question.
So,
what about this
little confidence
confidence
have
big
I'm sorry, what was the question?
students that have a little
confidence
or big doubt?
or big doubts?
One of the biggest tools that I say,
What do you recommend for them?
my message to the students who are struggling, as I said before, don't be afraid to ask for help. It will help guide you. However, there are students who need help. And so if it's, if deep down that there's a struggle, make sure that, your students are prepared, and I understand fully the hard work and determination it can take. And I know it can stress you out at times, but ultimately you have to, remember that it's up to you. And, I commend so many of you, but ultimately you have to have determination. Do not doubt yourself, because ultimately you can do it. And in the words of Albert Einstein, in the words of my godmother, an education can never be erased. So if you know deep down inside that you feel like you're unworthy of not getting a high school diploma, I can tell you, as somebody who is approaching 20 years old come November 1st, I can tell you for a fact that you can do anything as long as you have the growth mindset, the determination, and you must believe in yourself. And you must be gritty as well, because those two things is what can help you succeed in life.
Wow. So
I'm sorry, my dog is up there as well. But
now that you've graduated,
so
what are your next steps now that you've graduated?
I'm sorry, my dogs decide they want to jump in right in the middle of our conversation, but
they're just confirming that it works. They're just saying to agree.
So ultimately, when we were having this conversation on the way to FCTM, and I heard that song called "Sail Away" by Anya, which I find completely transparent. And my plan as of right now is to enjoy the rest of summer before it runs out. But primarily, my ultimate goal is to be a school administrator or school counselor. That way I can help the next future of our gritty students, and I can relate to them, like if they know in their hearts by saying, hey, listen, I don't know if I can do this. I think by sharing my story with them will actually help them remember that, oh, okay, so he's one of me. He knows my struggles. He knows what I had to endure. So I completely get it. And especially, as somebody who had to, my mom was a single mom from, the time that I was 3 years old to the time that I was, to the time that I am now. And I can tell you for a fact, it's no easy feat, but I, commend her tremendously, because she too had grit at 45 going back to earn her high school diploma. So ultimately, my advice is, as far as who I'm going to aspire to be, my goal is to be an educator, to receive my bachelor's from UF, and then my ultimate goal is to graduate from St. Leo with my degree in either ed leadership or psychology. That way I can, teach our students, and then, make sure that they're prepared for life in the way that I was as well.
Wow. That's fantastic. University of Florida
would welcome you.
So I think you
fabulously.
However,
it was like a million emotions that went through my mind as I was walking across the stage. And, when my counselor called my full name, I was like, oh God, what do I do? So a little backstory, my assistant principal for curriculum was actually in the media center over at the school that we were at. And I remember sitting down and I was like, you look wonderful. She goes, oh, thank you. She goes, anyway, shake with your right, receive diploma left. I did a complete 180 and did shaking with my left rather than my right. But, long story short, had it not would have been for the teachers at Wharton High School, and, I can tell you for a fact, it's been a very surreal journey. And I'm just glad that, God has, molded the next chapter for me, which is, of course, being more gritty now that I have to devote 4 years of college. But, I know that, he has great plans in store for me.
This is beautiful.
Now,
who would you like to
thank?
Well, I would like to first off thank, I I feel like I'm at the Grammys, if you will. Like, you know how you go up to get the award and you have so many people to thank. First off, I commend you, Dr. White. I can tell you for a fact that had it not would have been for you to instill the values of grit, determination, and resilience, I would not be where I'm at. I also want to thank my amazing mentor, Representative Valdez, as well, for being right by my side for the last 16 years. It's been an emotional roller coaster, but you know, without you and Dr. White's determination and faith in me, I would not be where I am. I would like to thank also the amazing teachers, administrators, and counselors at Morton High School for giving me the ample opportunity to learn from one of the best teachers. And I would especially like to shout out my former principal and my current principal in the same way, Michael Rowan and Taryn Anello, for their amazing work that they do. It's not been an easy feat. And I also want to thank my AP for curriculum, Mrs. Brandy Garcia Blanchard, for really, pushing me to succeed, even though she calls me a cabezon, which in Spanish means hard-headed because I can be. So she used to, but overall, I'm going to thank the Hillsborough County School District for what they do.
Yeah.
I know that it has not been easy, and I know that you guys are saying good riddance to me, but promise me I'm not going anywhere. And as a matter of fact, as we're celebrating accomplishments, in addition to graduating high school, on Tuesday, July 29th, I will be recognized at the next Hillsborough County School Board meeting for my services as an activist for public education. And so I will be, right. So I'm very grateful to all the amazing folks at Hillsborough County that have really prepared me for life.
And also
school board.
Yes, Nadia Combs, Patty Brendan, Jessica Vaughn, Lynn Gray, Karen Perez, Stacy Hahn, and Patty Brendan for really, and Shake. I cannot forget. Because I didn't know it would have been for, and he's a good guy. He really has determined me, and he's like, a second father figure, that I've never had. So I, commend the school board of Hillsborough County, but also, those long and far who have, came to FCTM for their faith in me as well. And I applaud Dr. White again for the amazing activism that she does for me, and I cannot wait to write the next chapter, and we'll stay gritty.
That's right.
That's right.
I'm so proud of you. My heart is full. And so can you a future contacts in advance.
So I am a student still. Well, I'm a graduate, but I'm now a college student. So you can reach me at my phone number at 813-860-3678. This is my personal cell phone, but do take it into consideration. I do have office hours every Monday and Thursday between 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. and on Wednesdays and Fridays from 9:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. So if you need to reach, and this is Eastern Standard Time, if you need to reach out to me, do not hesitate to do so, but you can also email me directly at alexanderbrivera008@gmail.com. If I do not reply right away, just hang tight and I will respond that way as well. My LinkedIn is www.linkedin.com/n/AB Rivera12. If you want to connect with me and be a part of my a part of my college journey, I cannot wait to have you guys. And again, thank you again for having me, Dr. White. It really has been an honor.
Oh, it's an honor. Trying to put your. Let me know if this is. Where do I mess up?
Yes. I'm sorry, what was the question?
Your email.
Yes, that is correct. Okay. I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses with me. They're in my office somewhere. allowing the FAFSA applications. But
yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
I just want to make sure
I want to
that
make sure that they all
yes, this is the correct email. Mhm. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And you know, again, Dr. White, it really has been an honor being on your show for. Whew, I've been on your show since I was 14, on and off. But you know, long story short, we've come a long way, and you know, we have many more chapters to write and mold the next generation of gritty thinkers. And you know, and I feel that I'm ready to prepare our future generation for the next phase in life, which is preparing them for life.
So then, can you
So
give
then,
one
can you give one statement
telling people
how
grit works, being a
being a
confirmation
confirmation
that grit works?
that grit works?
It does. It really does. And it's really a team effort. So, you know, my advice is, you know, just remember to stay humble and kind first and foremost. But secondly, always never forget where you come from. If, you know, if somebody tells you to your face, you can't do it, you look them in the eye and you say, yes, I can, because I can, and I can prove you wrong. Because Dr. White, when I first met you, I was struggling very deeply with depression. And I didn't know what to expect, y'all. Like, I didn't know who she was. I just knew she hosted a podcast every Thursday night at 8. But once I started seeing different people coming on, I was like, okay, you know, I know that, you know, she can help. And I pulled her aside and I told her that I wanted to have a conversation with her. And she has really been the steadfast hand at the wheel. Because, you know, had it not would have been for you, Dr. White, I would not have walked across that stage yesterday. I would have not have been, you know, I would have not have spoke at the FCTM. I would have not have, you know, had, you know, so many people reaching out to me, asking me, you know, how do you do this? How do you do this? You know, from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of the state of Florida, I thank you for the work that you do.
Stop making me cry.
Stop making me cry.
You sure you're not cutting onions, Dr. White? I think it might be cutting onions over there. I'm not sure. But
Yeah.
Well, you know,
Well,
I think
wonderful.
and
And
we're just
emulating. Congratulations.
And so
if I had my own board, I would do it from right to left. But you know, it really was. Yes.
I plan on being there too.
Yes, and I was, you know, I remember, and you know, I'm just glad that, you know, even though this journey is over, you know, in the words of so many different people, and I do want to share a brief quote with all of you before we wrap up. There's a quote that I want you guys to always remember, and that is to never give up on your dreams, because you'll never know when that dream is realized. And again, congratulations to the class of 25, and let's go out in the morning and crush it.
Yes, stay gritty, guys.
Everybody, thank you so much for
being a guest. Let's get gritty.
Let's get gritty.
Guys,
go ahead. Send an email. Follow me as well.
Stay gritty.
Take it with you.
And we will see
you guys next.
Alexander.
Thank you.